This program on Human Evolution Part 2 was presented by Richard A. Mathisen on October 14th, 2018 to the Breakfast Forum of the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Lehigh Valley. Part 1 from July 29th had focused on 5 major changes during human evolution: the tripling of brain size, evolution of marriage, evolution of morality and cooperation, evolution of symbolic language, and evolution of tools. This program, Part 2, focuses on the social brain hypothesis of Robin Dunbar and Robin Dunbar's 5 major transitions of human evolution. Stage 1, the Australopithecines walking upright. Stage 2, early Homo, when the brain enlarged. Stage 3, archaic humans called Homo heidelbergensis. Stage 4, fully modern humans of 50,000 years ago. And Stage 5, agriculture from 10,000 years ago. Okay, that's us, the forum. All right, there's Jane Goodall with 3 chimpanzees, and human evolution is about how we got from chimpanzee-like creatures to modern humans. There were 5 major changes. This is what I discussed last time. 5 major changes were the tripling of brain size, marriage, the evolution of morality and cooperation, the evolution of language, and the evolution of tools. And topic 1 was the tripling of brain size. This is the human evolution timeline from 5 million years ago. And it starts with the last common ancestors of chimpanzees and humans. You see 5 million years ago down in the bottom left. And the brain size of chimpanzees is 450 cc's. So then, if we double that to 900 and triple that to 1350. 1350 is the size of a human brain. And you can see over about 50,000 years ago, 50,000 before present, we have fully modern humans. The brain size has tripled in 5 million years from 450. And most people think it went up like little by little, but it didn't. It actually, for the first half of human evolution, 2,500,000 years, we had something called the Australopithecines. The most famous one is Lucy. You see her at 3.2 million. It's a fossil skeleton. Then, at 2.5 million years, there's tools and butchering, and this character called Homo habilis, or handyman, because he used tools. And then it goes something called Homo erectus and goes all the way up to fully modern humans. Although there's an important species called Homo heidelbergensis. It's about 500,000 years ago. And anyway, the main question is, why did the brain start growing at 2.5 million years, and then at the end it stopped? Okay, this is all what I covered on the 29th. Topic 2 was marriage and hunter-gatherer society. And this is going to be, Bernard Chapais, a book called Primeval Kinship, talked about how pair bonding gave birth to human societies. Sex among chimpanzees is what we call sexual promiscuity. She will want to have sex with all of the males in the group. You shouldn't take that as negative. That's what chimpanzees do. Then it changes to where we have marriage and in-laws. Topic 3 was morality and cooperation. Morality is about cooperation, suppressing selfish interests for the sake of the group. Chimpanzees are notoriously self-centered. Hunter-gatherer groups are strongly egalitarian and group-centered. In other words, by the time you get to the hunter-gatherer groups, they don't allow anybody to be dominant, which is the opposite of chimpanzees. Chimpanzees have a very rigid dominance hierarchy of both males and females. There's an alpha male and a number 2 and a number 3. There's an alpha female, a number 2 and number 3. But by the time they get to the fully modern humans, the hunter-gatherer societies, They are strongly egalitarian. They will not allow anybody to be an alpha. And this is the way humans evolved, to be very egalitarian in hunter-gatherer groups. And that went all the way up to 50,000 years ago, and in fact later, and then changed because of agriculture. We'll talk about that a little later. So anyway, that evolutionary process took place from 5 million years ago till the fully modern humans of 50,000 years ago. And then that's when the human race split. All of those humans, all of those early humans were in Africa up to 50,000 years ago. 50,000 years ago, some of them split. They went, I'm thinking about Egypt and Israel, and they spread over the whole world. And they became still hunter-gatherers, but the Eskimos in the Arctic and the South Sea Islanders and the Australian Bushmen, the Native Americans, they're all hunter-gatherers all over the world until agriculture. The evolution of symbolic language. There's 3 stages. The left stage is really gestures. It's non-vocal. The middle stage is grunts. It's vocal. And then the full symbolic language at the right. Animals with small brains can learn to connect certain grunts with certain actions and meanings. Finally, we got the use of tools. And the important tools, there's older one tools, that's the tools from 2.5 million years ago. Later, there's something called the Acheulean tools, about 1.76 million years ago, which feature hand axes. The tool we can't date is fire. We'll be talking about that a little today. And of course, there's a possibility that there were sticks and stones, clubs used much earlier, but there's no fossil evidence of that. Okay, putting it all together. Why did the brain grow? The first thing, this is from last time, the social brain hypothesis of Robin Dunbar. Intelligence evolved to solve the problem of a large number of social relationships in a group, including deception and coalition building. And there's also climate change hypotheses in hunting and war. Okay, now, this is where I start today. Robin Dunbar, he's the scientist who came up with this social brain hypothesis, and he's very well known for it. This is his latest book, Human Evolution 2016. And Robin Dunbar says, what animals have the largest brain for their body size? And the answer is apes and monkeys, who are called the anthropoid primates. Okay? And their brains are so large because they live in very complex societies. Now, in all other birds and mammals except primates, the species with the largest brains are monogamous. In birds, they're 90% monogamous, and the most monogamous species have the largest brains. In mammals, they're only 5% monogamous, but the monogamous species outside of primates have the largest brains. There seems to be some connection of monogamy to brain size. Primate societies are monkeys and apes, including chimpanzees. Why are they so complex? And the answer is grooming. Okay, that's one monkey grooming another monkey, and look at the expression of the other monkey's face. Okay, grooming, it's touching. I sometimes describe it as like having your back scratched or a body massage. It's very relaxing, and monkeys and apes do this all the time. All the time means when they actually measure it on a 24-hour basis, it's about 10 to 20% of their day is spent grooming. Basically, for primates, apes, and monkeys, the 3 big things they do are seek for food, sleep, and groom. That's what their life is about. Okay. Primate grooming records show that primates prioritize certain best friends. And 40% of the grooming time goes to their 5 best friends, and 60% goes to the 15 best friends. There's about 50 chimpanzees in a group. And these best friends are also their allies whenever any problems arise. In effect, grooming functions as a method of coalition building. And grooming creates a multi-level system of emotional bonding. This is what the social brain hypothesis is about, and this is pretty well accepted now within evolutionary theory. Robin Dunbar, studying gelada baboons, they're an unusual baboon that lives on the ground, which makes them quite interesting for comparison to humans. Realized the significance of the numbers of 5 and 15. Grooming is a major expenditure of time. And he developed a time budget for primates, how much time they spend eating, sleeping, grooming, and basically it seems that according to brain size, that determines the size of the group you live in and how much time you need to spend grooming. And it led to the development of Dunbar's numbers, which are 5 and 15, 50 and 150, and it's actually 500 and 1500, but I didn't want to get too complicated here. Here are Dunbar's numbers for humans. This is you and me. 150 is the number of friends we have on the average, and it seems to be a maximum. 50 is the number of good friends. 15 is the number of best friends. And 5 is the number of intimate friends. The 150 level, that's all our friends. That's the level from 50 up to the outer 100, are disproportionately relatives and in-laws. The 50 level, which is our good friends, are disproportionately chosen friends. We're making a distinction here between friends you have because you want them and friends you have because you were born into the family. You know, your blood relatives and your in-laws, you don't have any choice. Well, you have a choice of spouse. So the 15 and 5 levels are about 50-50 relatives and chosen friends. In other words, your closest friends may be your spouse or a son or a daughter or a mother or father, brother, sister, or they may be a chosen one. And the same for the 15. So this has been subject to a lot of research, and it all seems to hang in there at this number of 150, you know. They asked like a couple thousand people in England to submit their Christmas card lists, and they had average of 154. And you can also do it with Facebook friends as long as you distinguish between people you really have a relationship with and... Okay. What does this mean? Life in a monkey or chimpanzee troop is highly stressful. You need to stay on good terms with everyone, but especially with your allies. You need to pay close attention to what everyone else is doing, and that's why primates have such large brains. What does it mean for humans? Human friendships seem to fall into very similar categories, such as the 5 intimate friends and the 15 best friends. And it may be for similar reasons. Humans have by far the largest brains. And Robin Dunbar's 1996 book was titled Grooming, Gossip, and the Evolution of Language. He, in effect, is comparing grooming in chimpanzees, in monkeys and apes, to gossip in human beings. They're servicing your network of allies and friends by gossiping about other people, which every study of language shows when you see what people talk about, it's almost always other people, right? What causes large brains? The largest brains for body size outside of humans are the primates who live in complex social situations. The largest brains for birds and mammals, except for primates, are for those species who are monogamous. Humans have both complex social groups and quite often the long-term pair-bonded relationships, usually called marriage. Humans happen to have the largest brains compared to body size. What are the implications for evolution and the growth of the brain? The implication is that something happened about 2.5 million years ago that seemed to cause the brain to grow. Two possible choices are pair bonding of some sort or language. To Robin Dunbar, the evolution of the brain is very much influenced by the emotional bonding of social relationships and the need for understanding the mental state of other individuals, which he calls mentalizing. Okay? What you have is basically monkeys know what their own brain says, while the chimpanzees can also think about what the brain of a second person does. Humans can go to 5 levels of intentionality, such as, I think that John knows that John thinks that Barbara is doing something with Debbie, and in other words, you can do those levels and think of all of them on a true or false basis. You're able to have opinions that people might have different opinions than you. Chimpanzees can do it at about the level of a 4-year-old child. They can learn language at that level. But it's the keeping track of all the social relationships. I'd like to just give you Robin Dunbar's overview if I can. Okay, he says there's 5 stages to human evolution. And the first one, remember, it starts with the last common ancestor over at the left side, and the brain stays the same all the way to 2.5 million years ago. So that's the Australopithecine stage. Okay, that's the first stage. Basically, the difference between chimpanzees and Australopiths is Australopiths walk on 2 legs instead of 4. They spend their time on the ground rather than sleeping every night in the trees. So that's the first stage. The second stage is Homo erectus, early Homo. This is when the brain starts growing. The third stage is what I call Homo heidelbergensis, the Heidelbergs. That's about 500,000 years ago. And the fourth stage is fully modern humans, 50,000 years ago. They continued to live as hunter-gatherers until 10,000 years ago. 10,000 years ago, very recent, is the start of agriculture. Okay, basically what I wanted to do is this, yeah. There's not, well, we already talked about that. This Homo erectus stage, there's 2 ways to use the term Homo erectus. I hope I don't confuse you. But one is Homo erectus in the broad sense, and the other is Homo erectus in the narrow sense. Homo erectus in the narrow sense is there were some of the Homo erectus that left Africa, and they got to Indonesia and even as far as China. They were called Java man in Indonesia and Peking man in China. It's about a half-size brain. But they actually lasted a long time, that species, Homo erectus in the narrow sense. Then there's others, they're called things like Homo rudolfensis or Homo ergaster. These are all fossils found in Africa. And scientists are trying to figure out which one was before which one, and which one led to this or led to that. I can tell you just a quick story. In 1981, the American Museum of Natural History in New York City had Donald Johanson. He was the guy who found Lucy. And he spoke, and then the next year they had Richard Leakey, who's also a famous fossil finder. He found the Homo habilis. And they were arguing about the relationship of all of these early homos. That was 37 years ago, and they're still arguing. Scientists are, in other words, there's a lot of controversies in that early human period. But what scientists agree on is you can lump them all together and call them sort of Homo erectus in the broad sense. Okay, then we have Homo heidelbergensis. Now, here there aren't any arguments. Everybody agrees on three things, which somehow I didn't get the slide done. But they are that Homo heidelbergensis was the ancestor of fully modern humans. In other words, Homo heidelbergensis that stayed in Africa led to fully modern humans, which is us. But some left Africa and they became the Neanderthals. And the third thing is that Homo heidelbergensis was a hunter-gatherer. They lived as mobile hunter-gatherers in groups of 25 to 50. So that's important. The hunter-gatherer part is important because it means humans, the main line leading to fully modern humans, were hunter-gatherers for 500,000 years. And then they stayed, as we're going to see in just a second, they stayed hunter-gatherers even after they left Africa. So, you know, Native Americans or Australian Bushmen or South Sea Islanders were hunter-gatherers. Okay, then we had the fully modern humans, and I'm going to skip over that. I just want to say a word about agriculture, because I've been talking about how human nature is adapted to live as hunter-gatherers in small groups in Africa, basically. But then, even when they left Africa 50,000 years ago, they continued to live as hunter-gatherers until 10,000 years ago. 10,000 years ago, very recent, is the start of agriculture. And 5,000 years ago is the start of cities and civilizations. The pyramids began to be built 5,000 years ago. 2956 BC, I think, was the first pyramid. So, anyway, what you have is, it's all about hunter-gatherers until 50,000 years ago when they left Africa, then it continued until 10,000 years ago when agriculture started. And then everything changed because those hunter-gatherers that were very egalitarian and wouldn't allow a dominant alpha at all, suddenly with agriculture, then there's chieftains and kings and emperors and dominance and all the things that we associate with problems in the modern world go back to agriculture. So let me stop there and see if you have any questions.
It sounds like the independent variable in this analysis is brain size.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, could we postulate that as people learn what nutrients increase brain size and what mating practices increase brain size, we're getting to the point where we might be advancing to another level of human evolution?
It's an interesting idea, but you'll see at the end, even before fully modern humans, the brain levels off and stops increasing. So in effect, the brain hasn't increased in the last 200,000 years. Now the question is, why is that?
And can it be changed?
Well, or can it be changed? But I think, let me just answer that question because it's an interesting question. Evolution prior to 5 million years ago was entirely genetic. But as we go through this process, part of it becomes cultural, right? The tools are cultural, marriage is cultural, language is cultural. And so by the time you get to fully modern humans, instead of adapting to things with genes, we adapt to things with culture.
Brain size and intelligence. I'm being struck that at 50,000 years and prior to when the brain stopped growing, but up to 50,000 years, evidently the same brain size, you have much more intelligent people that could figure out agriculture, that could figure out things that the other folks are just going to be laborers. So what does that mean?
I'm not sure I've got you.
It's the same brain size.
And the same brain size as 50,000 years ago, right?
Right.
And why did they get agriculture?
So up to 10,000 years, there's a big space of time.
Yeah.
Same brain size. So some people are just, with that same brain size, way more intelligent, and their capacity to manipulate the environment.
Everything we know would seem to say they were just as intelligent as us. But it took something, this is a very interesting question. What happened 10,000 years ago to cause agriculture? It started with people settling in one place before agriculture. And then they domesticated 3 kinds of grain, barley, Enmer wheat, and einkorn wheat, and 4 animals, the goat, sheep, cattle, and pigs. And that group of 7 domestications all happened within a short time.
But the same brain size for 40,000
Same
years,
brain
but it didn't
size.
happen until 10,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but it's a good question about, right?
Yeah, I wonder if any of the anthropologists that you've been mentioning have commented on the Neanderthal enigma. Neanderthals apparently had a larger brain
Oh, yeah.
than Homo sapiens, and yet they disappeared. And there's all sorts of questions, some of them not too flattering for Homo sapiens, about why the Neanderthals disappeared, why they didn't. Why don't we have a society of Neanderthals now?
Yeah. There's 2 responses to that. And the first is they do have a larger brain than us. But a lot of it is in the back of the head. It's called the bun, the Neanderthal bun. And that's really a visual area. It's not a prefrontal cortex. So their prefrontal cortex wasn't as large as ours. The other thing is what happened to the Neanderthals. There's at least 3 theories. One of them is there were some new diseases and they got exterminated. Another is, this is the Ice Age. They became extinct about 30,000 years ago, which is the 4th glaciation, and they're up there, so it might have had something, or, of course, they might have just went extinct by themselves, or they might have been helped by Homo sapiens, killed. But those are all in play, but scientists don't want to take a guess because we really don't have much evidence. We know it happened soon after Homo sapiens came on the scene. But I thought I had a question.
Climate change?
Climate change, yes, good. No, there's 2 things about climate change you want to be aware of in terms of evolution. I'm not doing one. But first is there was a long-standing trend that caught the chimpanzees, and that was the drying up and cooling off of the great rainforests of Asia and Africa. And in Africa, that meant that the habitat of all the apes was just shrinking and drying up. And that forced some chimpanzees to the ground, which became the Australopithecines. But it continued, and then it eventually, I showed you a quick slide of the rainforest, where you're not going to walk around at all, and the woodland, which is what we think. But then you've seen the savanna, right? The African savanna with the plains and all the wildebeest and whatever. So it continued to go from mainly rainforest to this intermediate woodland and then to savanna. And of course the savanna is what brought in all the animals, which then became the food that the hunter-gatherers hunted, the deer and the buffalo and whatever. So there's that one change, which is a gradual drying, until about 2.5 million years. Then there's a second thing that happened, and this is called the Pleistocene period, the last 2.5 million years, but it's one that we know in the northern hemisphere as the 4 ice ages, right? So the climate is swinging back and forth between cold and warm up in the north hemisphere. We don't know what that means in the southern hemisphere, but it presumably, I know the Mediterranean Sea dried up 3 times. So there's major, and the Smithsonian Institute had something that I really liked when I heard it. And they were asked, well, is this about being adapted to the African savanna? And their answer was, no, we look at it as human beings are adapted to be adaptable. Adapted to be adaptable. So we can adapt to almost anything because of our various cultures. We have so many cultures. But, so, there may be a fifth ice age coming up, which would be the opposite of global. You don't know with climate what's happening. But, yeah, there was a lot of climate variation. In fact, all the agriculture, who was asking that, the agriculture of 10,000 years ago, 11,000 years ago is when the final ice age ended and it warmed, and that's when agriculture showed up. So climate does have an effect on these things. And I could go on and on, but I think it is time to
Yeah,
say.
we're just about out of time.
You've been very good.